So you've done a podcast, you've guested on a podcast. What next? This is one of the big questions faced by all thought leaders. What do I do with this? Well, if you remember from our chat about the attention economy in the last episode, the key to staying everywhere, being everywhere all the time and not cloning yourself is to use a strategy I call Omnichannel. And I'm going to share with you Omnichannel marketing, communication in this episode. And it's pretty straightforward. I've got a visual here coming up, if you can see the video version of what Omnichannel content really is. And if you're listening along and you want to get the video and the slides for this, then go to podcastguesting.pro and you can access all the material from this mini-series. What is Omnichannel? Omnichannel, omni means everywhere. Omnichannel means pushing your content out everywhere. Now, that doesn't mean more work, and this is important, that the key to omnichannel content and doing this successfully is you've done the work. You have done the work. If you guest on a podcast, you've done the work. You've spent years practicing that material. You spent years living it. So why now constantly give yourself more work, pushing it out and creating another strategy for social media and another strategy for your website? What I want you to think of is in your thought leadership journey, creating omnichannel content with your podcast as the mother lode, the heart, if you like, the beating drum at the center of this band, this musical gig. The podcast is the rhythm. So you create a podcast and you do it on a rhythmically basis. It could be 2 a month, it could be 4 a month. Your guesting depends. We offer different services at Podcast Guesting Pro. But let's say you do 2 a month. Start off easy. You do 2 podcasts a month. Each one is an opportunity to reformat content. So you take that audio from the podcast and you can do many things with it. And this is what we call content derivatives. And these derivatives will work differently for different people. Depends on what you have already, depends on what works for you and your audience avatar. Remember, we talked about that a couple of episodes back. So let's have a look at how those content derivatives work. 3 of the main ones that you can create from a podcast. Firstly, you can take transcripts. So a 40-minute podcast audio will provide about 12 pages of transcripts. That's a lot. Now think about what you can do with a transcript. With a transcript, you can turn that into an ebook. So I've worked with thought leaders who will take a podcast, turn it into an ebook, and then give that away as a lead magnet. Remember, we talked about lead magnets in episode 1 as a part of the funnel. Transcripts create these mini content upgrades, if you like. What works best with a small ebook is not a broad subject, let's say logistics, but a very niche subject, which is very relevant to the podcast episode you're talking on. So let's say you're on a podcast and you're talking about the logistics market in Asia. Well, somebody may be interested in that. They're not going to get that information anywhere else. So if you were to say, hey, I've got a small guide, a 10-page book on logistics in Asia, go to my website. Here's my website. Go and download it there. They will download that. And because it's very niche or niche, depending on which side of the Atlantic you live on, people will forgive the fact that the formatting is maybe not perfect. It doesn't look like a beautiful ebook. You can simply give this away with a front cover very, very easily. That's a great content derivative, which if you have written a book or you're thinking about writing a book, and I can tell you from the position of somebody who has written books in the past, is a great way to overcome the challenge of writing a book. That you can be an author already and you could publish these small updates and keep your audience engaged. You could have published a book 10 years ago, but here you are with this small update. It's about the future of work and the Great Resignation. my 10-page guide. People will grab that. People will get it and download. And you know that when they go to their website, give you their email, they're interested specifically in that subject area. So you can validate different subject areas that you talk about. So I'm going to talk about the future of work and the Great Resignation. I'm going to talk about the future of work and diversity. I'm going to talk about the future of work and DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion, as they call it. So that is a way of testing and segmenting your audience. See what people are really interested in. Maybe people are really interested in the diversity thing. Maybe they were really interested in the Great Resignation thing. But you don't know until you put it out there. So that's one piece of derivative content that you can use. You can also turn a transcript into a blog article. Blogs create great SEO. And if I'm there Googling away, looking for a logistics expert in Asia, people don't put that as their titles. The only way you can find that kind of information is through LinkedIn. But if I find your blog post, and I'm not going to go to the blog post and then feel that I've somehow been tricked because this is a transcript. I'm going to listen to your podcast, which you've embedded at the top of the blog post. So every podcast you do could become a blog post, and you capture all that information. And how powerful that is for thought leadership, because really thought leadership starts with Google. If I'm looking for somebody, there is no directory of thought leaders out there. I'm looking for specific keyword terms, intent, as they call it. So if I find that, then I know you're the right guy. And that's where the journey starts. So you've got me into your website because I was Googling for logistics leaders in Asia. I came to your website and wow, I found that you did all these podcasts and different podcast hosts. So different validations of your story. And then I went in and learned about your backstory. And then I'm on board. I'm signed up to your newsletter. And now the journey with you and me starts, where I can find out more about you and think about how that has grown as a journey over time, just by simply reformatting what you've done already. And the last piece of omnichannel content that you can use is you can use the highlight reels. These are easy. You can take video, even if the podcast that you do is simply audio. If you do, one of the things we say to our thought leader clients is that if you are doing a podcast with somebody on Zoom, obviously it's the host's Zoom channel, but ask them, is it okay if I record this? Record the video as well, because I might want to use this for my highlight reel. Almost all podcast hosts are okay with that. And you could say to them, I just want to use the video of me. That's fine. So, the host doesn't feel in any way out of place because they haven't done their hair or their makeup. So you can use that. You can use 90-second videos. 90-second videos work really well. You can put them out on shorts, on YouTube, on Instagram, even on TikTok. You can push them out onto social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. You can take quote cards, reformat cards about yourself with your quotes, and you can also use the actual link to the podcast itself when it gets published. So there are many ways to reformat your content, and there will be many more as well. And we're seeing people experiment with different things. Some people take the audio and they reformat that and create their own podcast out of it. So it's a podcast of my 6 guest appearances on other people's podcasts. Obviously clear that with the host before you do it, but most of them will be fine with it. You can record the video on your end. There are many, many options here. And let's go back to the beginning, why this is important, because you've done the work already. So don't fall foul of this idea that you've got to be constantly busy finding new channels and new strategies for these channels, because you are a thought leader. And the key to being that and staying in and growing in that position is not wasting your time on the small stuff, not sweating the detail, because that is where you'll switch from a different zone of your brain into another one. And that's where you're going to lose your momentum. That's where it becomes like spinning plates again. You need to just focus on that sweet spot and build a system around you to help you stay in that position.